Welcome to the Global WarWatch Network. From smart weapons to autonomous war machines, AI is rewriting the rules of the battlefield. But is humanity truly ready for what's coming? Today, we're setting the stage for a really critical conversation on how artificial intelligence is, well, rapidly transforming military operations. It's influencing everything, from global power dynamics down to tactical decisions on the ground. We'll explore the ethical complexities this tech introduces, the essential need for human oversight, and also this pervasive issue of bias embedded within these powerful systems. Look, this isn't just about advanced technology. It's really about the future of conflict and humanity's essential role within it.
That's absolutely right. The impact of AI, its profound impact on military capabilities, is just undeniable. And while AI definitely promises unprecedented speed and precision, it also introduces incredibly complex challenges, really complex. We're talking about fundamental questions around human control, who's actually accountable when things go wrong, and the very real risk of unintended consequences. So our discussion today will hopefully shine a crucial light on not just what AI can do, but maybe more importantly, why we need to understand its applications so deeply before these systems become even more integrated.
Okay, let's try and unpack this then. AI is fundamentally redefining dominance on the front lines. So how exactly is it changing the strategic landscape and influencing global decision-making, going far beyond just the tech itself?
Well, what's truly fascinating here, I think, is how AI is reshaping geopolitical power dynamics. You see, major military alliances like NATO, for example, they now explicitly view AI as absolutely critical for future security. They've acknowledged its profound impact on global defense, and they're even aiming to set, a responsible example in its development. So this isn't just a technical upgrade, it's a fundamental strategic shift that's redefining international relations. And a big part of this is these AI-based decision support systems, or DSS. Now, these are designed to assist, not replace, human decision makers. That's the key idea. Yet the crucial insight, and this is important, is that AI's assistance isn't neutral. These systems can subtly, almost invisibly, shape the military decisions being made about the employment of autonomous weapon systems and human fighters alike.
Ah, so it's not just about what they do, but how they might influence our thinking, our choices.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Exactly. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the successful implementation of these DSS systems significantly speeds up decision-making. Massively speeds it up. This creates what some call acceleration pressure, where rapid responses become the expected norm, the standard. And you can imagine how this dramatically impacts crisis management and, well, the overall pace of geopolitical reactions. Things just move faster.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay,
Yeah.
so with this acceleration in mind, what does this all mean for the actual battlefield? Can you give us a sense of AI's current military footprint, maybe beyond just the kinetic engagements we often hear about?
Yeah, definitely. AI's military applications are incredibly diverse. It extends far beyond, simply firing a weapon. On one hand, you have autonomous weapon systems, AWS. These are weapon systems that, once they're activated, can select and engage targets without any further human intervention. That's one category. But just as impactful, maybe even more so in some ways, are those AI-enabled decision support systems, the DSS that we just discussed. They collect and analyze vast amounts of battlefield information for operational intelligence, helping commanders make, in theory, faster, more informed decisions.
Right. And are there any applications that have a direct humanitarian angle? Or is it mostly combat focused?
Well, yes, AI is also being explored for humanitarian services, things like forecasting instability in a region or aiding disaster relief allocation efforts. However, there's a really significant caveat here. If these models are biased, and we'll talk more about bias later, I'm sure,
Yes.
they can lead to discrimination or serious misallocation of resources, which completely undermines their humanitarian intent. It could actually make things worse. Beyond that, AI is being integrated into targeting processes, which obviously carries risks of misidentification, hitting the wrong target. And it's also used in intelligence gathering and surveillance, with the potential for discriminatory practices like profiling certain groups.
So if we're talking about real-world applications, maybe drilling down into intelligence and surveillance, can you give us some concrete examples, like AI's visual reconnaissance in action?
Certainly. Take maritime surveillance, for instance. AI can assist submarine officers in detecting and classifying vessels using things like optronic masts, advanced sensors. It identifies potential threats, maybe highlights anomalies, and can even provide explanations for ambiguous classifications, things the human eye might miss or misinterpret. This capability, crucially, shortens the reaction time for human officers to make those critical time-sensitive decisions. Then you have things like military camp protection. Here, AI-powered systems use, say, wide-area motion imagery sensors, WAMI, and pan-tilt zoom cameras, PTZ cameras. They're used for object detection and threat assessment around perimeters. And these systems can even recommend countermeasures based on pre-programmed rules of engagement, ROE, and standard operating procedures, SOPs.
Okay, interesting. And what about land-based operations, say, in populated areas?
Right, well, in land-based reconnaissance, especially in inhabited areas which are incredibly complex environments, AI assistants integrated into vehicles can provide real-time updates. They can track movement, identify potentially eligible targets, all while implicitly considering those embedded ROE and SOPs. And they might even recommend deploying additional sensors, like unmanned aerial systems, UAS, or drones to fill in information gaps or get a better view.
Okay, here's where it gets, for me, really interesting. When we start hearing terms like robo-generals, AI's strategic influence seems, well, unprecedented. But what are the big ethical trade-offs here? What's the core concern beyond just simple automation?
That's precisely the central ethical dilemma, isn't it? Should AI have the ultimate say in lethal decisions? In life and death decisions. The human-in-the-loop principle is often cited as paramount here. A human must remain the final and sole decision-maker. That's the ideal. However, several challenges consistently undermine this ideal control in practice. One major issue is something called automation bias. This is where humans tend to over-rely on automated systems. We just trust the machine. And this can lead to serious errors, either of omission or commission, if operators uncritically accept AI suggestions, potentially disregarding their own training, their own experience, or, their gut feeling.
So it's not just about the AI making a bad call, but humans potentially accepting that bad call without enough critical thought, just going along with it.
Exactly. And it's surprisingly prevalent, studies show. Another challenge is de-skilling. While these DSS can certainly reduce cognitive workload, which sounds good, over-reliance can lead to a loss of essential professional skills. Imagine if the system failed or goes offline. Soldiers might actually struggle to manually assess intelligence reports because they've become too accustomed to the AI doing that heavy lifting for them. Then there's that acceleration pressure we mentioned earlier. The very speed that AI offers can create a kind of peer pressure against slowing down to double-check, to verify results, which directly hinders meaningful human control. You don't want to be the one slowing things down.
That makes a lot of sense, particularly in high-stakes, fast-moving situations. What about the broader impact on the human decision-makers themselves, psychologically or morally?
That's a crucial point. It brings us to the concept of human dignity. When AI starts calculating things like attrition rates or probabilities of casualties, it risks dehumanizing individuals. It reduces human lives to mere data points, numbers on a screen. And this can distance decision-makers from the profound moral significance, the weight of their choices. Finally, there's a real concern for human autonomy. DSS could potentially foster micromanagement, providing such granular orders down the chain of command that it erodes the autonomy of individual soldiers, risking a kind of only following orders mentality, which, as we know, has deeply troubling historical precedents.
Wow. Okay, so if something does go wrong, if these systems make a mistake or contribute to one who is truly accountable, accountability seems incredibly complex, maybe even impossible in the age of algorithms.
You're right, it is a huge challenge, a massive one. While AI systems are often biased, frequently reflecting underlying human biases, as we've touched on, it's generally agreed that humans are ultimately responsible. Why? Because AI, as it stands, cannot be held morally accountable. It doesn't have intent or moral agency. But assigning blame, actually pinpointing responsibility, is really hard due to several technical hurdles. For one, many AI systems are inherently opaque, what people often call black boxes. This makes it extremely difficult, sometimes impossible, to understand how a proposed course of action was derived by the AI, or even to correct mistakes effectively after the fact.
Is anything being done to make them less opaque, to peek inside the black box?
Yes, absolutely. There's a whole field called explainable AI, or XAI, that aims to address this lack of transparency. But it's still very much a work in progress, especially for complex military systems. Also, traceability is critical. This requires having transparent and auditable methodologies, data sources, and design procedures. Basically, logging all the system information, the data used, and the user interactions allows for retrospective review, which is vital for accountability. You need that audit trail. Finally, just the sheer complexity of scrutiny is a barrier. You have multiple actors involved: developers, users, commanders. You have algorithms that can change and adapt, and they're malleable. You have persistent lack of transparency, often due to proprietary systems or security concerns. All of this makes it incredibly difficult to spot, correct, and then attribute bias or error when a harmful outcome occurs.
This naturally leads us then to a crucial issue often highlighted in the sources we looked at, this global race for AI supremacy and the potential moral compromises involved. Specifically, this pervasive issue of bias in military AI. Can you define bias in military AI for us in this context?
Sure. In essence, the policy-aligned definition describes bias in military AI as the systemically skewed performance that leads to unjustifiably different behaviors, which may perpetuate or exacerbate harmful or discriminatory outcomes, depending on such social characteristics as race, gender, and class.
Hmm.
So it's not just about a system being imperfect or making random errors. It's about the potential for unfair and discriminatory results that are linked back to ingrained societal issues or specific group
You're
characteristics.
right. And where does this bias actually creep in? Is it always like intentional discrimination programmed in?
It generally arises from three main sources. And no, it's actually rarely intentional, which makes it harder to tackle sometimes.
Yep.
First, there's bias in society itself. Pre-existing societal inequalities, prejudices, historical injustices, these are often reflected, sometimes inadvertently, in the training data sets that AI systems learn from. This can manifest as things like selection bias, where certain populations or environments or even types of scenarios are either under or overrepresented in the data. Or, the data might accurately reflect historical over-surveillance of specific locations or communities, effectively embedding that societal bias right into the AI's understanding of the world. And even when developers try to scrub sensitive characteristics like race or gender from the data, the AI can often still pick up on proxies and reinforce these inequalities anyway.
So it's almost like holding up a mirror to our own flawed data, our flawed society sometimes. What about the development process itself? Can bias creep in there?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's the second major source. Bias in data processing and algorithm development. This comes from the choices, the assumptions, the shortcuts made during an AI system's creation. Human choices. Examples here could include reporting bias, where maybe the programmers inadvertently emphasize certain outcomes over others based on their own perspectives, or using problematic proxy indicators like assuming age, gender, or even race can be reliable indirect measures for determining combatant status, which is obviously deeply flawed. And studies often point out that a lack of diversity within the development teams themselves often contributes significantly here. Different perspectives aren't brought to the table.
Okay, that makes sense. And the third type you mentioned.
The third is bias in use, sometimes called deployment bias. This type emerges during an AI system's actual deployment in the real world. It often happens because of unanticipated contexts or, crucially, how humans interact with the system over time. Think about transfer context bias. Maybe a threat detection tool that was trained primarily in rural settings might suddenly become very inaccurate when deployed in a dense urban environment. The context changed. Or systems that might subtly adopt user preferences through positive feedback loops, effectively learning and then amplifying existing human biases present in the users. And of course, user cognitive biases, like that automation bias we discussed earlier, can further compound this issue in real-time operations.
These different types of biases sound like they could have profound, even devastating real-world consequences, especially when we think about humanitarian implications. Can you give us a sense of what that looks like on the ground?
The consequences are indeed severe, potentially catastrophic. First, and perhaps most obviously, there's the misidentification of targets. Biased data or algorithms can cause systems to wrongly infer threats based on things like racial or gender stereotypes, leading to false positives attacking civilians or false negatives missing actual threats. This could directly violate international humanitarian law, particularly the core principle of distinction between combatants and civilians. Second, you could see disproportionate incidental civilian harm. If an AI is assessing potential collateral damage using bias models, for example, using a one-size-fits-men approach in its calculations that doesn't account for the presence of women, children, or people with disabilities in an area, it can lead to drastically underestimated and therefore disproportionate civilian casualties.
That's a chilling point, how something seemingly objective, like a calculation, can have such a deeply discriminatory impact.
Absolutely. It's not objective if the foundations are flawed. Then there's disproportionate surveillance and profiling. Biased AI used in intelligence gathering can reinforce harmful stereotypes, leading to discriminatory practices against certain groups, maybe based on ethnicity or religion. This can result in serious privacy invasions, other human rights risks, and could even lead to preemptive military action based on flawed, probabilistic assessments rather than concrete, verified intelligence. Scary stuff. Fourth, moving to the humanitarian aid side, you risk stigmatization and discrimination in relief actions. If AI models used for planning humanitarian assistance are biased, they might overlook the needs of vulnerable or marginalized communities. This could lead to delayed response, resource misallocation, or even the complete exclusion of certain groups from receiving vital aid, which directly violates core humanitarian principles like impartiality.
And finally, I assume these biases must make that whole accountability problem even harder, right?
Precisely. They significantly exacerbate the difficulty in spotting, correcting, and attributing bias. The sheer speed and complexity of these AI systems, involving, as we said, multiple actors, malleable algorithms, often proprietary systems, and a general lack of transparency. It all makes it incredibly hard to identify bias when it occurs, fix it, and hold someone accountable when harmful outcomes result. And if we broaden our perspective for a moment, this whole integration of military AI presents us with a kind of dual path, doesn't it? One path could potentially lead towards de-escalation, maybe through international cooperation, transparency, and shared controls. But the other path, perhaps a more likely one right now, leads towards accelerated autonomous arms races driven purely by national competition. There's clearly an urgent need for international treaties and AI arms control. But what's concerning is that current discussions in the military domain often seem to lack the same depth of engagement on bias that we're starting to see in the civilian AI world.
So, wrapping this up, what does this all mean for us, for people listening right now? What's our role, if any, in shaping this future?
Well, it really emphasizes the crucial role of public debate, informed public debate, and the urgent need to establish robust ethical frameworks. Policymakers, military leaders, developers, they absolutely need a deeper shared understanding of the issue of bias in military AI. It can't be an afterthought. And ethical frameworks aren't just, theoretical niceties. They are essential practical tools for guiding responsible development and deployment. This includes focusing on maybe 5 core principles specifically for decisions supporting AI in military use.
Okay, tell us about those core principles.
Right. First is traceability. We touched on this. It means understanding not just the AI's results, its recommendations, but how those results were derived. This often requires using explainable AI methods and critically meticulous logging of all system interactions for later auditability. You need to be able to reconstruct the decision process. Second, proportionality. This is fundamental, ensuring that AI-assisted decisions align strictly with international humanitarian law and legitimate military objectives, always weighing the anticipated military advantage against the risks, especially the risks to civilians. This has to be, as one source put it, a fundamental part in a nation's military doctrine, not an add-on.
And what about keeping humans in charge, that control aspect?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That leads to governability. This is fundamentally about the human user's guaranteed ability to override an AI-based decision at any point or completely deactivate the respective system. Non-negotiable human control must always be possible. Then, responsibility, reinforcing the point that the human user remains the final and sole decision maker and is ultimately responsible for the outcome because, again, the AI itself lacks moral agency. We can't blame the algorithm. And fifth, reliability. The systems themselves must be robust, safe, secure, and perform their intended functions consistently and predictably. And importantly, they need to provide clear feedback to human users when it cannot reach a reliable result, or when it encounters high levels of uncertainty or ambiguity. It needs to know its limits.
So ultimately, it sounds like it's about fostering critical thinking, a healthy skepticism, even when faced with these incredibly powerful AI tools.
Exactly. It's absolutely essential to draw more attention to AI-based DSS and to raise much more awareness to their moral impact. These aren't just tools. They're complex socio-technical systems with real ethical weight. This means continuous, rigorous training for military personnel on AI limitations, on potential biases, is crucial. We need to foster critical thinking and a healthy portion of skepticism or caution towards DSS. Don't just trust the output blindly. And finally, instead of just passively accepting this idea of technological determinism, the belief that AI's dominance is inevitable and we just have to adapt, a really comprehensive risk analysis is in order. One that rigorously weighs the potential risks against benefits and provides clear guardrails developers and users could follow. And this requires an informed public, like your listeners, to engage in the debate, ask hard questions, and demand transparency and accountability. That brings us to the end of our discussion today on AI in warfare. A huge thank you for joining us and participating in this really important conversation. Yes, thank you. And we sincerely hope this exploration has given you, our listeners, a clearer understanding of the immense complexities and the profound ethical challenges presented by military AI. It's a field that, as we've seen, continues to evolve incredibly rapidly, and just staying informed is absolutely key.
We definitely encourage you to share your own thoughts and questions in the comments section below. Your insights really help us understand what stands out to you, what resonates.
And of course, if you found this discussion valuable, please do like, share, and subscribe to the Global WarWatch Network. It helps others find this content.
You can also join the conversation with us on social media. All the relevant links are provided in the description. Until next time, stay vigilant and stay informed.